Dramatic pause. The 14 things you need to know, part 2. Alright, we just wrapped up talking about, well, we didn't really wrap up, I paused, talking about strong first line, last line, paragraph, sentence, and title. In 12 seconds or less, you need to title your work, okay? And it needs to be a strong title. We'll talk about this as we go along, okay? What makes a good title? But you need to be thinking about this. Don't throw titles away. Title is the first thing a reader sees. You need to have a strong opening, whether it's a poem, whether it's a story. Actually, anything that you write, essays, all that, and you remember from Comp 1, you need the hook. Are you ready? Hook. You need to grab the reader's attention. You need to grab editor's attention if you're seeking publication, because trust me, from all my years of editorial experience, if you don't grab me right at the beginning, it's gone. And you need to finish strong. In the handbook, it's more than 12 seconds. In the handbook, you're going to have pages that talk about strong openings, and you'll have a whole list of how many things have opened. Lolita, are you kidding me? Go check that out. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul, Lolita. Like the tip of the tongue, and it goes on. You can go read it. But are you kidding me? Nabokov nails it. And when you're talking about endings, and there's, I think, the 100 best endings that are in the handbook, go check that out. Because, man, if you finish strong and make it resonate through the whole work, you've done your job. We're moving on. That was more than 12 seconds. Go into the box, write to your obsessions. Now, let me explain a little bit about this. You need variety. I'm just standing here. I do not give you specific writing assignments, like write about this or write about this for your creative works. Why, you ask? Because in the end, you need to write to your obsessions. Like it or not, we have stuff we need to write about, that we want to write about, like it or not. What is that? Well, I call it the box. Somewhere between your heart and your gut is the box. What is the box? It's that place where you put your stuff. And you know what I'm talking about when I talk about your stuff. It's your secrets, it's your lies, it's all the things that you've regretted in your life, all the things that have hurt you, all the things that, and this can be a dramatic statement, that ultimately bring us all together. All of us are in this class for a reason. Like it or not, you stumbled in here, but I'm willing to bet if we were honest, truly honest with each other, we have more things in common than we do different. But we don't talk about those things very often. Why? Because it's in the box. It's those things that we don't talk about in polite conversation. A quick example, it's in the handbook. Stephen Dunn's poem, The Routine Things Around the House. Not to ruin it for you, but you're going to rush and find it in there very quickly. I can't remember which page, just dig through. He writes a poem talking about how he approaches his mother and asks to see her breasts. I'm letting you recover from the shock. And Mom opens up her blouse, shows him, buttons back up, and she goes on to do the routine things around the house. Now I know you're shocked for a minute. You're saying, what? Exactly. But the point of that is, it's a very meaningful and important poem that might be a little shocking, but he's going into the box. This is something we don't confess at a dinner party. It's not something that you yell out at a big, kegger party. Woo! I saw my mom's breath! You don't do that. You just don't. But these are things that actually happen. And you will see in the handbook many pieces of writing, and feel free to dig through, and when you find something, you go, whoa, ask about it. I, her name, A, lowercase I is her name. You'll read some of her work in there, and you'll go, what is this? What's going on there is we're going into the box. We're looking at things that people don't necessarily normally talk about. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that this is what you have to do. But what I'm saying is, you have to be informed by what you have in the box. Let me give one quick example, and this is important. This is something We might even end up doing as a writing exercise because it's that important. Often what I will do is to say, okay, write about a tree. Okay, write about a tree, and here's the leaves and the branches and whatever. Then I ask people to do the following. And actually, if you want to do this, it's going to be brilliant for you, by the way. To think about the saddest, most devastating, most hurtful experience you have had in your life. Okay, that's asking you to go into the box, grab that thing, that memory, that experience. Then I ask, with that in mind, with that right at the forefront of your brain, now write about that tree. What happens is amazing. What happens is that tree suddenly takes on all the weight of whatever this is. And now the branches, the leaves, the roots take on a completely different meaning. So what are we really doing there? What we're doing is we're moving this to metaphor, where now the tree is not really just a tree, here it is, a tree, but this tree is your father dying in the hospital room, taking his last breaths as you watch. And as you look around the room and see your brother and your uncle and whoever else in the room, and as a nurse comes to you and hands you a Ziploc bag with your father's belongings, his wallet, and the silver $50 that he kept in his pocket always for luck, and it rubbed so raw that it was almost smooth. Now you're saying, where did he come up with that? That's my experience. And that's the kind of thing that I would take to the table from my box and approach that writing. What I ask you to do is to find those things that are in the box. You may not be ready to write about them directly. We're going to talk about this as we go along, when it's time for you to write something. Because sometimes emotions are too raw for you to write about something at that particular moment, at that particular time. At the risk of saying too much, but it's in the handbook. My brother passed away of cancer when I was 15. It took me years to be able to write about that successfully. The first stuff that I wrote about it was why does he have to be pulled away from me? And it was all the raw emotion. It wasn't until many years later that I had finally found a way to write about it. I had finally digested the experience enough to be able to write about it in a meaningful way. And that's in the handbook, and we can talk about that more as we go. I got to keep going. Ask the question, what if, and tell a story. Now, we often do this in life. Well, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? What if I had followed this path? In writing, the great thing is, you have an opportunity to ask that question and follow and pursue these avenues, and guess what? Was that exciting? It was for me. If you follow the wrong path, you can back up and follow a different path. You can ask the question constantly, what if? You create a character, you create a setting, you create a conflict. Well, what if Bob decides to go to the grocery store and shoot the guy that's messing around with his girlfriend? What, you say? Well, I don't know. What if he decides to go and visit his mother and talk to her about the situation? I don't know. What if he does this? What if he does that? The question that you constantly ask is what will drive any of your writing. To constantly ask the question, what if? Now, just a quick footnote. I know the most intimidating thing that you can face as a writer is the blank page, the blank computer screen. You're staring at it. There's nothing there. The world is full of possibilities. But as soon as you start to put things down, one word will necessitate the following of the next, and the next, and the next. So, my encouraging words to you is when I say write, sit down and get some words on the page, because the blank page is a scary space. Once you start to write, things will start to unfold. So, when you ask that question, what if, it will help drive the writing forward. Ask that question. Ask this question of your writing. So what? You must have an answer. This is a tough question to ask about writing. And when I talk in the syllabus and I tell you here up front that I'm going to be honest with you as we go along, more honest than anyone has ever been with you. So be prepared for that. When we ask the question, so what, we have to look at a piece of writing and really ask the question, what does this amount to? Is it important? Is it something significant? If actually, as many of your bad poems, as we've looked at, you ask, so what? Who cares, really? Do you walk away from it with anything? And if the answer is no, then you might say, ultimately, this piece of writing has failed. So when you ask the question, so what you're really saying is, does this piece of writing carry meaning? Does this piece of writing carry some importance that will make it memorable enough to leave me with a lasting impression? Whatever that impression may be. And I always don't want to rule out entertainment, humor. As many of you have pointed out, some of these things are funny. And being humorous is important as well. I never want to leave that out. You're going to see, we're going to have a lot of depressing things. And you'll see that I love dark, depressing stuff. But it's the stuff of writing, it's the stuff in the box. But to be humorous, to be entertaining, these are important things too. But it has to answer to the question, so what? We're still trucking. Are you hanging? Are you hanging? See, I do this in class too, because usually at this point people are glazed over. This is video, so you can pause it, go get something to drink, go to the bathroom, come back. As a matter of fact, you're probably doing this right now. Hey, I hear you. Okay, it's good. Ground the writing. Make use of form. Now, that's kind of a combo piece there. What do I mean? What do I mean? When you ground the writing, generally, when we start out writing, we somehow want to start out in this weird abstract place. And this goes back to this whole idea of abstract versus concrete and love. If you start out up here, love is the vastness of the universe. Love is the stars and the astral planes. Love is... Where are we? What are we doing? If you ground the writing and you start out in that drawer, in that box, with your stuff, you go and you open up this ring case in the drawer and you pull out the napkin where the girl, I was about to say guy of your dreams, had put lipstick blots. They blotted lipstick on this. The guy wouldn't, maybe. Or maybe so. Who knows? But you pull this napkin out, and this is this important napkin that you've kept for years. And then you go and I fill the napkin and I see this, you know, the ink stains on it and all that. Then you start to drift off. You're okay. Why? Because we're grounded. We know where we are. We know what we're dealing with. We know exactly the situation. Generally, my recommendation too is if you float off, come on back to the concrete. If you can end back with this image, and usually that means you come back to this concrete thing you started with some renewed meaning. Okay? So, when you ground the writing, what we're really talking about is start out in a place where we know where we are, what we're doing, and we have something concrete to hang on to. Don't start out up here, start out here. Does that gesture help you? Start here, not here. Make use of form. I need to talk a little bit about that because I've seen some of the things that you're already starting to write. You need to make sure that the form suits your work. And this is a difficult thing that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about it as we go along, this whole idea of form. So what I want you to do is be very aware of form, particularly in poetry, and how the form, how it looks down the page, on the page, informs the writing itself. Okay? Here we come back. This is part 2. We're going to have a part 3.